They demolishing all of those? That's what I'm saying. He couldn't. He couldn't. Yeah, you told me. You had called me. I was going to risk management meeting. What you have on? And you talked about the people that was gonna help.
First, I want you and Jerry to eat my Hagar.
that Alabama thing I just hate talking about? They have cleaned their mess up. Oh, the state. They eliminated 70%, 5% of their. When I worked in Washington, D.C., one of the neighborhoods there also did the same thing many years ago. That's it. I think that might be the number. I could be wrong on that, but I'll find it. I, what can I do to make it? I call all the legislators and I said, everybody sent in everything. And I said, but can't you amend by such? It's a big deal. And this fire department, because one of these days, our firemen not good.
Good afternoon, everybody. We are waiting for the chair to arrive. So as soon as the chair arrives, then we will move to get started.
Good afternoon. How are you? I just texted. I just told him I was going to be late. Mr. Mayor, how are you? Good. Mr. Gart?
He's older than my grandchildren. I'm almost 80 years old. Another two.
Been ready. Ready, Jim? Sir. Ready? I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Public Safety Committee. Have a couple of brief opening comments. I think quite a few members of the Highland Neighborhood Association are here to discuss item F on the agenda, which is squatters' rights in Highland, or lack thereof. We have a few agenda items to attend to before that. And I don't know if Councilman Talaferro or Chairman Taylor has any comments. Okay, so item A, if Chief Smith is here, if he could come up. I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry, Chief. Yeah, I need to ask, does anyone have any public comments? You're welcome to come up and speak. Yes. Just state your name and address, ma'am.
Janie Lipscomb, 490 Ockley,
Yes, ma'am.
Shreveport. I started the first bed and breakfast inn in Highland, so I really do love Highland, and it's an important place to me. And I think at that time I anchored a neighborhood that was, if you stepped out of the front door, you'd fall through to the floor. So it's had its problems. The vagrants in the houses have been going on for a long time. I did bring a little information. At the meeting the other night, they told us that the owners need to put a privacy or keep out sign up.
No trespassing.
Whatever.
Yes, ma'am.
The owners are dead. Their children are dead. Their grandchildren are dead. Most of their cousins are dead or live in Colorado. We need a legislation similar to the one in Alabama that has cleaned up their blighted properties. I talk about this a lot. I think I've sent y'all a couple of copies of it. It won't happen until it happens. And I talk to legislators and they talk about doing it, but they never do it. And it works. In 2 years, they cleared up 70% of the blight in Mobile, Alabama. It works. So I also ask questions like, what does it cost the fire department to put out these fires in these abandoned houses?
That's one of the questions we're going to ask Chief Reese today with the fire
Good.
department.
Well,
That's why I asked you, the members of the association to attend, because we have the city attorney here who was not able to attend the other night, and Chief Reese. So we had some legal questions the other night that I was not able to answer.
That's correct.
That
Yes,
perhaps we can get answered today.
Great.
Ms. Janey, the legislation that you sent us on your email, was that state legislation for Alabama?
That's correct.
Okay. I wanted to make sure.
I'm sure that the city attorney would be able to explain this better than I, but apparently there has to be a state statute that got started with Napoleon.
I wanted to double check when you sent that today, and I read it before I send it to our legislators as well.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Any other public? Teresa?
My name is Teresa Ederton Scott, 549 Wilkinson, Shreveport. One question I don't think we put on a card the other night is, and I've asked different people I've talked to, I would like to know the number of fires, and of course we're focused on Highland, but it would be good to know for the whole city, that occur in vacant properties. And when I asked the arson guy, he said, well, he's sure somebody collects the data, but he didn't know, off the top of his head. And the other thing that I think I did put on a card the other night that might address a couple of issues and is, how did we close down alleys that people are not accessing, to get into their backyard, back driveway? That might address some of the problems where you've got squatters and we've had arson. So those are my two issues. I mean, I have lots of issues, but that's
Okay. Thank you.
Charlotte Russell, 533 Jordan Street, Shreveport. I'm the president of the Highland Neighborhood Association, and I think as an association, having worked on squatting and the dangers it presents to our neighborhood, and particularly the historic homes in our neighborhood, the biggest question that we have run into multiple times, and I think this is a city attorney question, is what do we do as neighbors when we know that someone is occupying a property illegally, but we are not the owners of that property? So we can't put up no trespassing signs. We can't call and report them for trespassing, but we know. So the fire that happened on Columbia left a 77-year-old widow homeless this weekend. She and multiple neighbors had reported the house next door to her multiple times for problems. It was known to be an issue, but because of an absentee owner, there was nothing that could be done, is our understanding. So how can we address that and speed up that process, I think, is our biggest question as a neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Sarah Scott, 2300 Cresswell in Shreveport, 71104. And first I want to thank my councilman, Mr. Brooks, for making us aware of this meeting so that we could attend and address issues that happen over and over in our neighborhood. During our meeting last week, a lot of good information was passed on to us. We got the citation for the squatting law, and we also found out that there's some vagueness in this particular law that keeps our police from being able to fully enter and do what we're all wanting to be done, which is move the squatters, arrest the squatters, whatever it is. So I would really like for us to address at some point today the vagueness that is found in the Louisiana Revised Statutes 14:63. Because to me, this is a round-robin effect that is doing very little for our city and particularly my neighborhood. So I would like to address the vagueness in the statute so that I could start writing to my legislators down in Baton Rouge. And if my councilman and all of us did this that are impacted by squatters, maybe we could finally change that old Napoleonic law that allows all of this to happen. And I'm sure Alabama did some of that. So if we could address that, that's good. Also, in my neighborhood, we have people who have no running water that are disposing of their sewage contents on open property. And we've reported it. Maybe we didn't report it to the right people. Maybe we need to go through the public health unit. We're still trying to figure out how to navigate all this as citizens in Highland. So if nuisance laws doesn't cover squatters adequately because of vagueness in the criminal trespass squatters law, that would be great to address that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Thank you. Yes, I'm Jeffbazook. I live at 3118 Centenary Boulevard. My son and I own 6 homes in Highland. We buy and we have rental property there. We rehab homes and flip homes there. Highland, as we know, is a beautiful and historic part of our city, but it's burning down. It's burning down, and it doesn't seem like the cries of the Highland homeowners or the people that rent homes there, it doesn't seem like the cries of the people are being heard by law enforcement. There seems to be rules and regulations why liars, cheaters, thieves, meth heads, robbers, burglars, and all sorts of ne'er-do-well criminal gangs roam our streets and go from house to house. Now, concerning the house on Columbia Street. I went over there personally and interviewed several of the neighbors there. I don't know if our news people got any stories from the people that actually live in the neighborhood, but I went across the street, and one young lady was glad to tell me the story of what it's like to live across the street from the home on Columbia Street that I walked, made pictures of, that burned to the ground. Now, it had burned just recently before that. And this lady told me at one time there were 10 squatters in the front yard coming over, stealing her water, tormenting and taunting people as if nothing happened. Well, then there was a fire. Well, then the people left. And then a guy came back and he was arrested. She said within a day or two, she saw on the website somewhere, where the guy got out. Well, then it wasn't long, like last week, where the house burned to the ground. A poor lady that lived next door, her house was so damaged that she's lived there 40 or 50 years. She's 75 years old. She doesn't have the money to fix her home. The electric has been pulled off the back of her house. And I was told by Charlotte, who just saw me over there photographing this, because I'm concerned. There's a line in the sand, and I'm crossing that line. Something is going to be done. I'm going to go and personally, like Egan Street. Well, my gosh, there was a fire on Egan Street yesterday. Well, it's squatters, liars, cheaters, thieves, mess head, robbers, burglars. They're all over there. I talked to someone that was standing there. He told me, he says, well, I think it's the guy in the white truck over here. I said, well, have you told the police? He said, no, I didn't bother to tell the police. They're not going to do anything about it anyway. Well, that's how most of us feel. Nobody's going to do anything about it. But guess what? I have 3 felonies. I used to be a drug dealer. I've been to the federal penitentiary several times before God miraculously intervened in my life. And I know what it's like to be a drug dealer. And hey, guess what? When the police start rolling up and parking in front of your house or doing anything, that's called getting hot. And so when you start to get hot, guess what? You move. I don't see why our police department can't get in front of some of these drug houses that everybody in the neighborhood knows are drug houses, but nothing happens. Why can't they get over there and start filling out information, filling out all the long paperwork that they don't want to seem to fill out because they have to turn in all of these reports? So they let these people slide. They ask them, and the people don't have any paperwork. And my son has called again, and he said, Dad, I'm just tired of calling the police because they don't do anything about it. So I'm doing something about it. I'm going to every house. I'm going to photograph the people that live there. I'm going to turn in reports to the police department. I'm going to call the news. I'm going to make some news stories myself. And we're going to get to the bottom of this organized meth head drug dealing gang that lives in Highland with impunity and burns out house after house after house, and nothing's getting done about it. Well, hey, guess what? My beloved city council, let's take care of the Highland residents before a fireman dies. They go into these fires again and again and again, risking their life. Why? Well, because somebody isn't doing their job. Thank you.
You have a comment?
I do have one question. Well, we can do the minutes.
Are there any more public comments? Sammy?
Yes, Sammy Mears. There's an old saying that goes with all of this. When you see something, say something. Don't be quiet, because nothing will never get done if you don't speak up.
Thank you, Sammy.
Thank you, Sam.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
I'm Louis Rayleigh. I live in Highland. And I'm hoping this may be part of the answer to beefing up our police department as well as other first responders. And my issue is a lot of these houses that are being used for drugs, alcohol, or just a place to get out of the cold. I'm wondering who owns these houses. Now, I do know that the city of Shreveport, we, the people, own many pieces of property. Some of them may be only vacant lots. Some of them may be a house. And the thing is, I think it would be very beneficial to all the neighborhoods, not just ours, if we could get the adjudicated property administrator with the city, get with the parish tax assessor, and get them to work together to compile a list of adjudicated properties in each district. That way, possible purchasers in those areas can know where to go look and see if they're interested. Now, I do know the answer is, well, you drive through the neighborhood, you find a house or a lot that you're interested in, then you go to the assessor's office, and then that's too much red tape. With as much as the city owns and the parish, we the people need to know what we own, and possibly maybe we can buy it and turn it from something that takes city funds to maintain the yards, etc., takes the police and the fire department to police these areas. We can turn these properties around and make them produce taxes. Because I'm greedy and I'm selfish, but I don't like paying to have somebody cut somebody else's grass. If I'm going to pay to get the grass cut with my taxes, come cut my yard, okay? I'll give you a yard to cut. So I will just propose that the mayor, the adjudicated property representative, and the other tax assessor get together and compile a list. You can go online with the list, or if you choose, you can come down to one of these offices and get a written copy of it for your district. And this will enable these properties that are usable, or even a vacant lot that something can be put on, for some of these tax exempt groups in the city. There's plenty of them that should be able to, if you could get a group of properties together, they can build housing for people that are in need. Because right now we all know a lot of the people that can't afford to leave their substandard housing where their landlord does not take care of it, to move somewhere else. That if we could get something like we've just done downtown, out here on Ford Street, those wonderful apartments they built there, something like that could be done in other parts of the city too. And this way we would have a better face to put on to the world if people come to town for an event and they drive through here and they see dilapidated houses, burnt out houses, and all that. Well, if they wanted to put a business in Detroit, they'd go to Detroit. They wouldn't come to Shreveport. The same thing goes for people that are contemplating moving to our area to retire. Why would I want to come here when look around me? You know, it's a disaster waiting, and nobody wants to come here. These people, whether it's a business or whether it's an individual, they will pay taxes. These taxes will enable our departments to hire more individuals to enforce the laws. So I think the adjudicated property might be part of the answer, that some of these squatters are in those houses. Because I know in my block, there's 3. 2 of them wide open. Anybody that wants to go in there, and I do see them coming and going, but and the grass has grown up, yada, yada, yada. So I'm wondering if it's adjudicated. I may have to go down to the assessor just to find out. But it would be so much easier for people to try to purchase these if we could have a compiled list. That's my suggestion.
Thank you.
May I speak one more time very quickly?
Yes, ma'am.
This legislation that I've talked about in Alabama has cut through all the red tape. I tried to take care of some houses on Southern Avenue, and they had something like 45 heirs. And I drove all over Caney Lake and Ruston, and finally people said, "Janie, you're going to get killed. Go home." The Alabama law cuts through all that. You can get a quick, clean, quiet property title in 6 months, $5,000. You have to agree that you're not flipping it. You're going to make a residence out of it. And they do forgive property taxes for a number of years. I think it's 5. It may vary with each community or however it works. But the whole goal of this was to eliminate this you can't find heirs. There's a house around, I sent Mr. Talaferro a couple of years ago, a house on Gilbert that's got a big tree laying on top of it. It's been there for 15 years. Because there are so many heirs scattered so many places, it's not doable. I used to send people registered letters, and then I figured out, if y'all want to ever do this, send them a birthday card. People open birthday cards, and then inside of it you say, listen, I really need to talk to you about the house. But you almost have to be a magician or a detective or a trickster to get through with this. And the law enables Alabama, as it could Louisiana, we're not the only place with bad houses, to cut through the many years of the King's home. It was old homesteads don't exist anymore. I grew up in a house built in 1830. They tore it down. It's just, that doesn't exist in our community or probably in our nation today. So we really have to find a solution for people who are the trickle effect of getting away. And I hope that I'd be glad to work with any committee. I went to Alabama. This is serious. I'm not kidding. And I'd be happy to do anything I could because I put a lot of heart and love into Highland, as our mayor did. But we need help, and we have to be legal about it. So hopefully there can be a committee or a legislative group or something that will bring this about. Call me anytime.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
My name is William Hartman. I'm the executive director of a new nonprofit called Revitalized Historic Highland. And we are going to be doing some of what was just mentioned in terms of purchasing vacant, abandoned, or deteriorated properties and turning them around and getting them into the hands of owners who really will care about them. But my initial research into what's going on in Highland is not so much about adjudicated properties. It is properties owned by investors who do not have the best intentions of the neighborhood in mind. They are LLCs. There are all these entities that are overlapped. They are paying their taxes and at the same time letting the properties get destroyed.
Thank you.
Hey, how you doing? I kind of want to speak from both sides. Oh, I'm sorry, Jeremy Taylor, 516 Stone Avenue. I kind of want to speak from both sides, from an investor perspective and both owner perspective. It's not as easy as a lot of people think to maintain properties when you have people that move in and vandalize. But on the other hand, you have owners, they just abandon the properties. The apartment complex on Centenary done caught fire a number of times. It's an issue. Fires, period, in Highland are issues. The red tape, I don't necessarily call it red tape, but some of the things that you got to get over, the obstacles, going through the city, I think could be kind of narrowed down if it was more public input was actually accepted. And by me saying being accepted, there are things that me as an investor, when I go to pull permits, different things of that nature that I, as a local investor, have to do that out-of-town investors don't have to do. We have to jump through 50 hoops to get utilities turned on. Well, they don't have to go through hoops to get the utilities turned on. They have these outstanding water bills. Well, we can't get an outstanding water bill. They have outstanding light bills. Well, we get ours turned off. I think the standard should be even across the board. And I'm good with incentivizing big LLCs and out-of-town investors who are coming in and trying to change the area. But incentivizing is one thing, but just rolling the red carpet out for them and you don't do the same thing for local investors, that's bad business. I had a house torn down, and I know I've told y'all this story many times when we was fighting the blight. When we was fighting the blight, it was going around, they was tearing houses down. Well, I know that my house that they tore down in Highland, it wasn't worse than it's a lot of number of houses that I can name, especially the house on Herndon and Cresswell, is still standing. If property standards need the money, give them the money. They gave them the money when they tore my house down. Now I got a $4,000 bill for a $4,500 bill on one property. They tore down two. Both were actually in the process of being renovated. So I think that if we're gonna do it and we're gonna fight it, things have to be fair across the board. I think representation has to be even across the board. When I say even, the same way we fight for a dilapidated apartment complex, we need to fight for an investor who's trying to improve, whether it's just one house at a time. We can't say that we're going to fight these big corporations, but still fight against local investors who are actually trying to bring change that other corporations or LLCs and entities are not. Yeah, that's it. So, appreciate it.
Jeremy, I'm not familiar with a different set of standards for out of town ownership as far as water and electric that you just mentioned, but we can look into that.
Well, and the reason I mentioned that is because they facing getting their water turned off at one of the apartment complexes. And if I let my water bill exceed X amount of dollars, they're gonna come turn my water off. I got a $1,000 light bill at my house right now. And if I don't pay it, they're gonna either turn my lights off or I'm gonna have to, moving forward, I'm gonna have to pay a deposit.
Okay.
As an LLC
I see what you're
owner.
saying. I misunderstood what you said.
Gotcha. So now if it's gonna be fair, make it fair across the board.
Got it.
So I don't want to get into too many questions because I can talk about it more on the side, but let's just make the playing field even. All right.
Any other public comment?
Just one more. I used to live on the Centenary for a number of years, and everything was going just great until these people bought the units. And one day when I came home, I got a note on my door, and I asked them, what's going on? They said, did you read the note? I said, yeah, and it said, get out. They didn't even specify to me what they were doing, and I just said, I don't like that note. They said, well, get out. That was the worst day of my life, and I will never forget how they just did everybody doing them like that.
Thank you, Sam.
Anybody else? Okay, let's move forward with the agenda because I know we want to get, everybody here wants to get to agenda item F. Chief Smith, a couple of quick questions. Oh, approval of minutes. I get a motion to approve minutes of the November 22nd meeting.
Second.
Aye. Thank you. Chief Smith, the 44, 48 patrol cars parked behind the jail, I know we touched on this at the Highland neighborhood meeting. Would you give us the status on that real quickly?
Be happy to. We received 40 of those vehicles in November and 6 of them in December for a total of 46. And at this current day, we're still waiting on one that has not been delivered yet. 12 of the units are in the process of receiving their graphics. 32 of them have been, the radios have been put in, and 2 more is at the radio shop in progress.
I'm sorry, how many have the radios installed?
32.
32, okay.
Yes, sir. 11 of them have been upfitted. That's been complete. That's where it go to another vendor, T-Codes, and get the lines for the computers put in, the cages, and the light bars, and the other electronics to go in it. 11 of them have been completed so far, and 1 is at the technician now getting that done. Technical services, and that's within our agency. They're the ones who actually put in the computer in the car and make it all work with everything. 3 of them have been completed, and another one is in the process of being done. Our new vendor, Axon, which is for the camera system, 6 of them have been completed.
So of the 46 total, are any of them on the road? Are any of them in service yet?
Yes, sir. I think 4 of them have been completed and is online.
And I know back in the November meeting, I think Deputy Chief White said y'all project that most all of them would be in service in the first quarter
Yes,
of
sir.
this year.
That is
Is
correct.
that still your projection?
That is correct.
Okay.
And we see where the lag in the process is. We do our very best to do all our business locally. That's, the majority of our effort. If we can spend our dollars here local at a local vendor to upfit and do whatever needs to be done, that's what we're doing. But we are about to the point we're going to have to look outside our region because there's only 1, 2, maybe 3 vendors here in town, and each one handles a different part of this process. But here's the problem. They're also doing it for Caddo, for Bossier PD, for every law enforcement agency in North Louisiana, so they stay pretty back.
So you end up waiting on them?
Yes, sir.
What you're saying, they're backlogged?
Yes, sir. They'll tell us, I can get 1 or 2 of your vehicles in per week. But that is just one of the 8 or 9 phases that it must go through. And certainly we do not wait for A to get his job done if B, C, D, E, or F can get theirs done. We are moving around to try to get it done as quickly as we can. Okay. We're receiving the certification where some portions of this, the electronic parts, we can do ourselves in-house.
Okay. While you're up here, does anyone have any questions on the patrol cars?
I got a quick one.
Jim, Councilman Talaferro?
Chief, these new units, are they replacing our pool cars, or are they going to be take-home cars?
They're replacing what we've lost.
Okay.
As you know, and some of you may not know, because of the nature of policing, vehicles are always on the go, either in an emergency capacity or otherwise, which makes you prone to a lot of accidents. Thus far this year in January, we've had probably 15 accidents. 2 or 3 of them have resulted in vehicles being totaled. Well, that's kind of consistent throughout the year, and we get repaired what we can. But for instance, the ones that are total, that lessens our number of available units by that much until we get the next fleet of vehicles in. It's
So these are not surplus.
no, sir,
Yeah,
not
these-
by
these
any.
are actually
I'm not sure that this 40-some will even get us back to where we need to be
I just
that are
want
not
I just
take
want
home.
that distinction. If these are just replacing the units that have been crashed and or obsolete, so forth, that we are still rolling on the street.
That is correct. We are probably 40 to 60 vehicles short, if that's the appropriate word, from having what would be needed to furnish the officers that are on the current list for a take-home vehicle that live in the city a vehicle.
And just a reminder to the folks watching, the cost of one cruiser is how much?
About $67,000 to $70,000 from purchasing the vehicle and all the equipment that has to go in it.
So when we total a vehicle, we total more than just the vehicle itself.
Absolutely, and we do remove stuff from one vehicle to go to another.
If they're salvageable.
If it's salvageable, if it's a fit. Anytime that we change manufacturers, make and model, so much won't fit.
So follow up to Councilman Talifero, of the 46 that we expect to be on the road in service in the first quarter, how many of them will be take-home vehicles?
To my knowledge, none of them. All of them
None?
will be replacing what
Be pool
has
cars?
gone
Okay.
out of service since we got the last shipment of vehicles.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Agenda item B, and this one will be quick. I think, do we own 3 surveillance trailers now?
That is correct.
Okay, and Mr. Jackson bought 1 G unit.
Right.
Do we have access to 4 and we own 3 of them?
That is correct.
Okay. I'm curious particularly about the one sitting up on North Market at the location of the future substation.
Yes, sir.
Who decides where these trailers go and why?
We do. We make a collective decision amongst us where the camera needs to be, and also taking in consideration a request that we get, from the community.
So what, is there a reasoning behind that it's sitting up there on an empty lot?
Yes, sir. If you'll look also to the side of that, the sign that says City of Freeport, after we left that location here in December, people started illegally dumping dump truck loads of trash on that lot.
Okay.
Right beside the camera. That's before we put the camera there.
Before you put the trailer there?
Right. After we put the
Okay.
trailer there,
Because
we
I
had
think
no
Councilman
issue with it.
Jackson and my thought, and Councilman Bowman, particularly when we first got into this trailer situation
Yes, sir.
a year and a half or so ago, was that we put these trailers at populated events, whether it be
They do.
Spring and Texas Street or Festival Plaza or the fairgrounds.
Yep.
I personally didn't envision one sitting on
We do. When
an
a
empty
special
lot.
event, when a special event is scheduled, we will relocate them to the special event. The upcoming Mardi Gras parades, all of our cameras where they are will be moved from where they're sitting right now and taken to those locations.
Okay, so the one on North Market would be moved, say, to Clyde Fant Parkway?
That is
Or
correct.
to Shreveport Barksdale during the Mardi Gras?
Yes, sir, sure will.
Okay, thank
One
you.
question, follow-up? Oh,
Go ahead, Councilman Talifero.
So the use of this mobile camera system, how long has it been sitting there, and and has it been a deterrent? And if it's been a deterrent, can we not look at an opportunity, if it's been there long enough, to satisfy the needs of the department and maybe chase away anybody that would be doing that? I'm concerned that it's not, that there are other places on the Cooper Road or any place else that it may serve us better.
We can move them anywhere someone wants.
Well, it's not on us. I mean, I know,
Sure.
and maybe it is, we do have troubled spots. And I'm just saying that, I don't know how long it's been there. So I'm talking out of turn regarding that. I'm just concerned that, if it's been there long enough to
Yeah,
be a deterrent.
Has the dumping stopped?
Yeah.
Yes, sir, it has.
Is that
Yeah.
what you're trying to?
And maybe we can put up a stationary, a deer camera or something like that. I know that's very simplistic. but
It's
the
about-
point is that maybe it's a high piece, it's a piece of high technology, and it's deployed on the happenstance that we may or may not catch someone dumping. Believe me, on the commission, it's a very serious issue with people
Yes, sir.
dumping illegally. So I'm not minimizing that.
The chief may be catching something else that he can't tell y'all about.
Thank you, ma'am.
Is it you, Speed?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
I rest my case.
Yes, Councilman Green?
Sometimes it would be beneficial if you just would be the chief and just tell us you taking care of police business.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, sir. I'm a respectable, true Southern gentleman.
Okay, any more discussion on that item? Item C, I think if it's okay with the other committee members, we're gonna skip that one today, because that's gonna take a good bit of time, and I know the Highland people would like to get to the squatter situation. So Councilman Green asked that item D be put on the agenda about water termination and fire hydrants. So that'd be a question for Chief Reese.
No, Councilman, Mr. Chair, I asked the city attorney, but you can get some, I asked the city attorney to get some legislation for basically people not paying their water bill, such as apartment complexes. They go for a period of time without paying, and I just think if a regular citizen got to pay their bill, then I just think that I wouldn't be able to have my bill $30,000 or $50,000 and they not get cut off. So I asked the city attorney to look at some legislation as to how we could bring that to an abrupt halt.
Okay, I think that's something that Jeremy had touched on also. And I believe the administration, that's the $100 per apartment deposit that we just voted on, so that the complexes have up a larger deposit.
Right, but that's not going to help us collect the bill, the money that they owe for
That it's
water
owed
bill.
now, yeah.
So I asked him if he would. Marcus, do you have any comments on that as up to now? And I said to him the other day that I possibly would want him to address it at this meeting.
Thank you, Reverend Green. After we had that discussion, I had a long, productive discussion with the Director of Water and Sewer, Mr. William Daniel, about what it is that we do and have been doing in order to address our collection efforts and address cutting off people when they aren't paying their water bills, all the things that you and I discussed. I had some great conversations with Mr. Daniel, and I'm glad that Councilman Brooks mentioned the deposit that was just voted on, but as you said, we discussed some more specific reactions, and if Mr. Daniel would like to speak, I would welcome it. He and I talked about what we are currently doing and what we can do going forward when it comes to cutting off non-payers of water bills more aggressively under the current ordinance, and what would need to be done to strengthen that.
Right, and one other point is it's not fair to the folk who's paying their rent and paying their water bill to that apartment owner, and then he keeps the money, but they're the ones who's getting the problem, getting damaged because they paid their bill. They paid their water bill through the process. He has pocketed the money, and now he won't pay the bill. So I don't think that we should allow him to not pay his bill for 5 or 6 years or however long, it accumulates the money. I just think that we need to have a shorter distance that within 30 days, 60 days, all apartments, whoever business, they need to pay their bill just like I would pay my bill, and other folk are paying their bill. Thank you.
Attorney Edwards, I'm gonna ask you later what that particular term was called when tenants pay their bill and then the landlord does not do what he's supposed to do with the money. 'Cause that's some form of theft.
Okay. Any more on that agenda item? I'm sorry,
I think Mr. Daniel wants.
Mr. Daniel?
Yeah.
One of the, William Daniel, Director of Water and Sewer, one of the biggest issues with these apartments not paying their bills is we can't put a lien on the buildings. I mean, any other work that you do for someone, if they don't pay the bill, you can lien their property. You know, a plumber goes and does some work, he can put a lien on it. But we cannot put a utility lien on a property. And I just don't understand why that is. It's a state law. But I mean, it allows these apartment complexes to be able to duck paying their bills until we have to turn it off. And you're 100% right. The residents are paying their bills. And it just doesn't seem fair for the apartment owners to collect all the money, not pay the bills, and then for us to turn off the water because the only people that are impacted are the residents.
It still should be theft.
So, I mean, maybe we can contact the state and find out why we can't put a lien on a
totally
apartment
agree.
building.
Yeah.
Something else we're gonna have to do is manage their bills. If we let them get 3-4 months behind, then they're owing thousands and thousands of dollars. They should only have a 30-day extension, just like a resident. Once you let them go 3 or 4 months, it's out of control. They owe hundreds of thousands of dollars. So it's about collecting the money and making sure that's an enterprise fund, make sure we're collecting the money that's due. But if you think about it, just a few months ago, we had the same issue in other districts. Nothing happened. They went to court, got a slap on the face. So right now, we're looking like you can go to Shreveport, you don't have to pay your bills. Nothing's gonna happen. And I feel very bad for the citizens that's paying their water bill, that's paying their rent. It's a bad situation. But through this bad situation, it's going to take the administration to sit down and say, hey, what can we do? Because when citizens come up, they blame the council. Again, we have no skin in the game at all. We don't manage you. We don't manage the water bills. So at some point, accountability has to be taken.
And we are collecting some money on all of these bills. The problem is they don't pay down the balances, and we finally, as you are aware, wanted to turn off some of the water. And of course, you know, the residents objected. They call the local elected officials, and then we sort of backed down. Although I will say that it did help. Some of those apartment complexes made some larger than normal payments. But I mean, some of them have had leaks, and it is such a
Headache.
it is such a unfair situation. I mean, you have the smaller units where they're responsible for the water bill. There's a huge leak, and the owner won't fix it.
Correct.
And so the people the bill is actually in their name, they're stuck. And we just need to be able to deal with it in an entirely different way than we're dealing with it now, because it's whatever we're doing is not working. And I can turn off every apartment's water, but I don't think that's going to cure the problem.
Mr. Councilman.
Yes, Councilman Green.
Mr. Attorney, how do you tell people in the apartments without breaking the law that if they're the owner of the apartments are not paying their water bill, that the whole entire apartment complex keep their money? How do you tell them that without breaking the law?
There are solutions whereby I think the colloquial term, I'm not sure what the legal term is. The colloquial term is a rent strike, whereby tenants can put the rent in repository. They would still be paying rent, to be clear, in order to not break the law. But they would be paying rent to either to a court or to some sort of a keeper. There are steps that have to be taken before that, and I can try to come up with what that process would be so that you can inform your constituents accordingly. But there are ways to pay rent into a repository that will be held by an independent third party while you work out certain issues. It would take me some time to get you that answer, but I can't.
Right. Is there a way you could write me a statement before council meeting so I could say it without breaking the law? I'm just kidding. Thank you, Ms.
I'll get to typing.
Thank you.
I want to say one other thing that we are investigating is, we're now in the process of putting the AMI meters in everybody's residences and businesses. There is a possibility of putting those AMI meters in each individual apartment where, like the electric meter, if you go to an apartment, they have a whole bank of electric meters. We can perhaps put the water meter in the apartment. It would be very difficult, I think, to go back and retrofit all the old apartments, but starting new, that is something that I think we can do.
Thank you.
Mr. Daniel, I'm sorry, just one more question. So I know that this is not just a Shreveport issue.
No, sir.
There are other municipalities that have dealt with the same thing. We're not the only ones. And of course, anytime that we have an issue, much like the vagrant issue, the fire issue and so forth, there's always somebody that has already been there, done it, and has a program or has resolved the situation at hand. So I guess my question is that what research have we done, and do we have any research that says that Baton Rouge or Biloxi or Jackson or someone else has really kind of addressed this situation because they've experienced it like we do, and this is the solution that they've come up with? I do like the AMIs, of course. I think that's an excellent idea. Anything that we could do to narrow down the scope of usage and the scope of responsibility and accountability, I think that we should look at that.
And we have looked, we hired a lawyer. We looked at what we could do to try to collect against some of these apartment complexes. And given the state law preventing us putting a lien on it, it kind of precludes most of the solutions that you would ordinarily have in a case like this. So, I don't know what laws Mississippi has that would if they could put a lien on their buildings or not, but we cannot do it here. So,
I just pulled those out of the air.
Yeah, no, I agree.
There's nothing that I have that actually I cannot offer you any.
No,
kind of
we have
solution.
looked.
I'm just saying.
That's my point. We have looked to see what we could do, and other than turn the water off, that's pretty close to it.
Anyone else?
I am concerned that, and it may be dovetailing off of Councilman Green. I am concerned that, like a Sammy Mears, who got evicted, but at the same token regarding my water or my electricity, is that someone else's failure to pay, I don't get notification. I don't even get a heads up, and the next thing I know, I'm out of water or something of that nature. And
in my opinion, council members, there is no worse thing that can happen to you other than a death in your family than having your water turned off, because you can't bathe, you can't use the toilets. It's a public safety issue. The kids can't be fed, the kids can't be bathed. It's going to interrupt their school. It's going to interrupt your work. It's when all the other agencies have to come in and help, and they spend way more than what the water bill would have been.
But do we as a city have a responsibility to the users, the end users, that when we exhibit or when we find out that a bill, an invoice, is not being paid and hasn't been paid for whatever the grace period is, that they get some kind of notification that, I don't know what notification, anyway, some kind of a heads up that says, we got some issues here with the property manager or owner regarding your water situation?
I have to defer to
Got it.
the attorney.
Okay, that's probably the
I don't want to
touch rights
interfere with
issue.
the contractual relationship.
Okay, I get it. Thank you.
Is that, we good on that agenda item?
Yes, sir.
Agenda item F, I think we touched on this a good bit E. We touched on this a good bit yesterday at the work session, and obviously it'll be up for discussion again this afternoon at 3. So, considering we're under a time constraint here, I'd like to move forward with F, which is discussion with the city attorney's office, Shreveport Police Department, Fire Department, and property standards on squatters' rights, not just in the Highland area, but in the city in general. And a lot of these questions the other night, Attorney Edwards, were legal questions. So if you could, I guess briefly tell us I know there's a new state ordinance that passed in August. Could you give us an update on what rights, if any, that squatters do have?
There's an act passed in the regular session of 2024. It became effective on August 1st. They referred to it as the Squatter Prevention Act. What it actually did in practice was it expanded some of the definitions of simple burglary, including what we commonly refer to as squatting. So the unauthorized entering of a dwelling or other structure with the intent to temporarily or permanently deprive the owner, lessee, or tenant of full use of the dwelling or structure, or to temporarily or permanently assert any right of ownership to such property. That's what we typically refer to as squatting. That unauthorized entering, being included in the definition of simple burglary, provides SPD with basically a tool, but there are still some things that need to be done in order to activate that tool. There was some discussion during public comment about owners and how difficult it is to identify who the owners are, and particularly in an old neighborhood like Highland. I do want to expand out that definition a little bit. It's not just owners, or it's a lawful possessor. The reason why that matters is because there are some of these properties that have property managers or keepers, or a lawful possessor also includes a tenant or a lessee. So it's not just the owners, it's not just the landlords. Any lawful possessor has the ability to report to the Shreveport Police Department or other law enforcement agencies that, reasonable suspicion that someone is squatting in their property. This is a great opportunity to kind of highlight what we need these lawful possessors to do, to the extent that they can be identified. I do recognize that some of the public comment was that in some of these instances it's particularly difficult to identify who the lawful possessors even are. But when we know who that is, Chief Smith and I have had some discussions over the last few days about exactly what it is that we would like these lawful possessors to do. We absolutely would like lawful possessors who believe that they've got a squatting issue on one of their properties to board up the property, to post no trespassing signage. On that no trespassing signage, we would like for them to provide contact information with a name and a number for the lawful possessor. That will allow Shreveport Police Department to reach out to the lawful possessor and then say, that lawful possessor can then affirm to the police officer, no, permission has not been given to whomever is on my property. Please have them removed or arrested. That sort of active engagement by the landowner, the landlord, the property manager, whomever lawfully possesses the property, will help SPD use the tool that is the Squatter Prevention Act. The Squatter Prevention Act does not, it's not a panacea, and there were some discussions today about redevelopment, about adjudicated properties, about some of the depth and the breadth of the issue that we're talking about when it comes to blight. And those are some larger issues that are going to need some larger solutions. While public comment was going on, Mr. Dark and I were having a back and forth about the Mobile, Alabama example and some of the steps that were taken there. And I'm going to, me and others, will look into what they did right in Mobile and in Alabama and try to see what, if any, of that can be adapted and adopted here in Shreveport. I'll also say that there are some efforts that are beginning with SERA, the Shreveport Implementation and Redevelopment Authority, which has sort of the redevelopment side of this. The gentleman from Revitalized Highland was talking about, purchasing properties, redeveloping properties, and putting them back into commerce. That's sort of far afield from where we are when we're talking about enforcement, but it does sort of address the larger kind of systemic issue of these sort of properties that have gotten so far away from the owner that it's difficult to enforce because we're several generations removed from a present owner. So those are just some of the responses to the various questions that I heard earlier. And like I said, lawful possessors who are actively involved and engaged in trying to address the blight issues will help SPD be more active in their response.
Okay, my understanding of one of the big problems, particularly in Highland, is you use the term lawful possessor. So the neighbors call in repeatedly, and the neighbor doesn't own the house, like the one on Columbia. But the police come out there multiple times, and my appreciation of, and Chief Smith might need to clarify this, is that since it's not the owner or lawful possessor calling in, that there's nothing that the police can do. Is this correct?
I'll absolutely let Chief Smith sort of answer the law enforcement side of that. I would never say that there's nothing that we can do, but I'll certainly, and I also note that this is a new law that went into effect on August 1st. I don't know that it's been tested in Shreveport, and so, but I'll let Chief Smith respond to that.
He's exactly right. Oh yes, there's things we can do. We can investigate a matter, but that term still remain a lawful possessor, so it would be very, very limited in any action that we could take other than possibly if we could, without a doubt, prove that a person damaged or broke in the property. But if there ain't a witness that saw that happen, then that would be very remote. We can investigate and ask, why are you here and things of that nature, but nonetheless, one of the first things that have to be proven when we take actions against anyone for anything is, did you have a lawful right to be there to start with? The fruit of something that wasn't good to begin with has no value whatsoever. We have certainly a right and authority to be there to investigate anything whatsoever when anyone calls, but to take action, we definitely need someone who's lawfully in possession of it. Where we run into the problem is when you go to investigate something because you're told it's one thing, and you get there and it turns into something a lot greater. But yes, I would encourage the neighborhood to continue to call, and we'll continue to respond and investigate without a doubt. It can serve as a deterrent. It could possibly cure the thing. But before I take legal action, definitely need someone who's legally in possession of it to tell us I own that property. This is who I am, how I can be reached, and that person is there.
Mr. Chair.
Don't have the right to be there. I hope I didn't confuse you any worse than you were.
You didn't, Councilwoman Davis?
So with the house on Columbia, did we know who the owner is?
I have no idea. I
Okay.
can't answer that.
So if we know who the owner is for that particular piece of property, if we know who the owner is, you're the owner? No. Oh, okay. If we know who the owner is, and so did we, as the city, have any care premises? Did we cite this property? Because what it sounds like to me is that this property has been a nuisance in the community. It caught fire twice, and then it burned two pieces of property next to it. And so now a person is left homeless as a result of the said owner that we know who they are, negligence. It appears to me that at this point that we need to hold that owner accountable, because this is not a situation where we don't know who the owner is. Mm-hmm. What's also difficult for me with the new act, Attorney Edwards, is it's still difficult for the individuals in Highland who know that a squatter is in the premises, even though they don't know who the owner is, or just as Ms. Janey said, they may be deceased and they're in that premise causing a nuisance. So if they see drug activity or whatever, then I would say that whoever the CLO is that is active in that community, that they point that out, and then we need to rid ourselves of that. Because what's going to happen is that once they're there, they're going to migrate to another neighborhood. So if it's a problem for Highland, it's a problem for the city. But with these owners, when we know who these owners are, we need to go after them hard. Because now you have a lady that, according to the neighbors, that doesn't have a home. Mm-hmm. And if we cited them from the city, we need to do what we know how to do from the city's perspective. And then we need to get with our Northwest delegation so they can make these laws applicable, whoever the representative is in that area. Because this is beginning to be a huge problem. It's already a problem. So now they're looking for the solutions. So if we don't kill this sale right here, it's gonna trickle to every last one of our districts. And I'm not saying that as it relates to you, because then I think from the property standards standpoint of us issuing those citations, and then we got to stop giving these people, if we know who they are, and they have this good old boy system, and they're not being responsible, we need to cut that bull crap out too, and hold them accountable for this. Because again, now you have a burned down structure, people without a residence, and the squatter still gonna come right back. And we hadn't done anything in reference to that. So I think that we really need to navigate that and home in on that for sure.
There's a mechanism, a way to do almost just what you're talking about, and we do it periodically where we do charge a property owner criminally with letting a disorderly place. But in order to make that, we have to have documentation that illegal or inappropriate action are taking place on that property, and that owner has been notified several times that is occurring, and encouraged to help remedy the problem, and we can criminally charge
So
them.
with that being said, that if the neighborhood has already made the complaint, and they made the complaint to property standards, and property standards has gone out to cite this person and given them notification, and they still fail to do what needs to be done, then we need to look at the city ordinance at that particular point in time and make sure that we execute it. And so if we get to the point that we begin to criminally charge these people, then you're sending the message to stop that, especially if we know who the owners are.
Absolutely.
If they're individualized and it's not the LLC, and we know who the owners are, then we need to enforce the ordinance that we have on the books. I know of one ordinance for real because I increased the fines on there for this neglect
Sure
that
did.
we have. But we don't need our constituents coming down here saying we can't get nothing done,
Yes.
especially when we have the power to be able to enforce what we know how to enforce.
Yes, ma'am.
Along those lines, excuse me, Councilman, can we get property standards, Terrence, to come up? Mr. Green, please?
Mr. Chair, before you let
Yes,
him go,
Councilman
I just
Green.
have, Chief, someone also said about, they was mentioning that when your officers were filling out their reports, that they could go to those different places periodically. And of course, I know in my district, it has worked, periodic police parking in front of whatever does work. So I just wanted to just throw that out parenthetically, that does work as well. And I know it works because you've done it in District F, and I appreciate it. So I can't remember who was talking about
It was Mr. Bazooka, that if they would fill out the reports in front of some of these troubled houses,
Yes, sir.
that
So-
might deter
So periodic parking does
the
work.
the squatters from
Yes.
staying there.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do in fact do that. Matter of fact, one of the seminar, the only one that the mayor and I went together as a mayor and chiefs seminar over in Texas. Some of the greatest education comes from collaborating with your peers when you're not in class. And we learned about a thing that Dallas was doing called hotspot policing,
Yes.
which is just that, where we assign officers when they're not on call to go to a certain location and sit with their light on and write their report.
Yes, sir.
We've been doing that since we went, and it's really, you can see the difference in the numbers.
Yes,
So,
sir. And again, I appreciate you
Absolutely.
doing it in District F. It does work.
Absolutely. We're
Along
doing-
those lines, so we could, if we had an address such as the 400 block of Columbia, we could get with you on that and
Absolutely.
have a car sit out front and
That
fill
is
out.
correct.
I mean, I know they can't sit there 24/7,
Right.
but
It's while they're not on a call.
Right.
When they got to stop somewhere.
they could
and do
stop
the
there
paperwork, you
where
know.
you've had complaints.
Absolutely.
Or where we've had complaints. Okay.
Absolutely.
Mr. Green, are you available?
And it does work.
Hey, Terrence, how are you?
All right.
Pertaining to this particular house in the 400 block of Columbia,
Uh-huh.
had they been cited?
Yes. I believe the mayor went over that at the meeting. It has been cited. It has been posted. It was cited originally for demolition and the care of premises, but now it's just the care of premises. So we just have to proceed with the care of premises. But it was just posted yesterday. The original write-up is from I think it was January the 8th, somewhere around there.
The original write-up was from when?
January the 8th.
Okay. So, but it had been cited previously, obviously before it caught fire.
Whenever that happened. Whenever, I don't know what dates it caught fire or any of those details, so I just know January the 8th is when it was cited by the Inspector Hayes. Make sure.
Okay.
Excuse me, January 7th.
This is one of the questions I got at the meeting. Can a property, how often they wanted to know, could a property be cited daily until they come into compliance? I don't know if that's feasible.
No.
How often
No.
does your department cite a property?
We cited one time. They have the right to appeal, so I have to let it go through the appeal process. Now, if that's changed, if it can be changed, that would be up to them, but one time. Now, we cited for different violations. So he's got care of premises and demolition. So 2 violations on one day, and until we finish the appeal process, then
And how long do they have to appeal?
they have 10 days from receipt of notice. And if I'm hearing correctly, the owners may be deceased, so generally we wait about 23 days is what the postage tells us to do, is wait 23 days, then we can go ahead on and proceed to the next step in it.
So maybe I'm not hearing your answer. Was this house cited to be demolished
Yes.
before it caught on fire?
Yes.
Okay, before it caught on fire.
The second time, they're saying 2 times. I just know this last time when
Yeah.
I don't know when that date was.
Okay,
The first time it was cited, and then the second fire.
so the first time it caught on fire obviously didn't burn to the ground,
Right.
which this time it did.
Yes.
Right.
Totally.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Green? Yep. Okay, thank you. I don't know how to move forward from here, other than coordinate with your office as far as, and the chief on these patrol cars sitting out front of these properties. So I think we're going to schedule another Highland Neighborhood Association meeting. I believe Charlotte is in the next 30 days or so. And I would like to thank, I think we had over a dozen representatives from the city at the meeting. Perhaps you, or a representative from your office, could come to the next one, Mr. Edwards. So I don't have any more questions on that for now. Does anyone else have any input? Mr. Mayor?
No, we will continue to look for both ordinance changes and state law changes and practice changes to address these issues. We are very concerned. Obviously, I'm very concerned about it. I do live in the Highland area, and I have dilapidated housing right around my home. So this is something I'm very concerned about, and we will continue to work to see what we can do to alleviate the problem.
Agreed. So all the people from Highland that came today, thank you. And like April said at the meeting, this is not something that we're going to just talk about once and it's going to go away. So we will see you guys at the next Highland Neighborhood meeting. And if we need to put this back on a public safety agenda, a committee agenda, then we will do that also. So it's almost 3 o'clock, so we're going to have to adjourn this meeting for our regular council meeting.